Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. In the 21st century, cybersecurity is national security. It was in this frame that a few weeks ago, we made a major announcement about the future of Canada's telecommunications system. Given the significant and unacceptable risks that they pose to our national security, we stated our intention to prohibit Huawei and ZTE from Canadian telecommunications networks. Au 20e siècle, la cybersécurité est synonyme de sécurité nationale. C'est dans ce contexte qu'il y a quelques semaines, nous avons fait une annonce importante sur l'avenir du système de télécommunication canadienne. Compte tenu des risques inacceptables qu'il représente pour notre sécurité nationale, nous avons fait part de notre intention d'interdire à Huawei et ZTE l'accès au réseau de télécommunications canadiennes. Today, we are here to expand beyond the steps of excluding certain actors who pose a significant threat to our telecommunications network. Today, we're here to talk about the future of Canada's cybersecurity. The legislation which I tabled in the House earlier this morning presents us with an opportunity to reconsider what cybersecurity looks like and to redouble our efforts at creating the defenses that are necessary. The world is changing rapidly. New technologies in cyber are emerging, presenting Canadians with unique opportunities in the way we do business and go about our daily lives. At the same time, we also have to be eyes wide open about possible threats to our critical cyber infrastructure. Ransomware attacks, espionage, cyber attacks, foreign interference, the conduct of hostile state actors and their proxies are all part of the national security landscape. Seizing the economic opportunities while at the same time acknowledging the threats that exist is precisely why we are here today. And today, we are acting. This morning, I introduced Bill C-26. This legislation will protect Canadian cybersecurity by strengthening the partnerships between the government and the telecommunications sector, federal regulators, enhance supports for sectors of the economy that are vital to national security and public safety, and offer new tools to protect Canadians in cybersecurity. Ce matin, je présentais le projet de loi C-26. Cette loi protégera la cybersécurité canadienne en renforçant les partenariats entre le gouvernement et le secteur des télécommunications, les régulateurs fédéraux, en améliorant les soutiens au secteur de l'économie qui sont essentiels à la sécurité nationale et la sécurité publique, et en offrant des nouveaux outils pour protéger les Canadiens en matière de cybersécurité. The Act will do two things. First, it will amend the Telecommunications Act to add security as a fundamental policy objective. This will give our government the legal authority to compel any action necessary to secure our telecommunications system. Most significantly, this includes prohibiting Canadian companies from using products, equipment, and services from high-risk suppliers like the ones I referred to at the outset of my remarks. Second, the Act introduces the Critical Cyber Systems Protection Act, with a view to securing Canada's critical cyber infrastructure long into the future. This new Act will help organizations better prepare, prevent, and respond to cyber incidents across 4 federally regulated sectors: finance, telecommunications, energy, and transport. La loi fera deux choses. Premièrement, elle modifiera la loi sur les télécommunications pour ajouter la sécurité comme objectif stratégique. Cela donnera à notre gouvernement l'autorité légale d'exiger toute action nécessaire pour sécuriser notre système de télécommunications. Plus important encore, cela inclut l'interdiction pour les entreprises canadiennes d'utiliser des produits et services de fournisseurs à haut risque, comme ceux que j'ai mentionnés au début de mes remarques. Deuxièmement, il introduit la loi sur la protection des cybersystèmes essentiels en vue de sécuriser la cyberinfrastructure essentielle du Canada à long terme. Cette nouvelle loi aidera les organisations à mieux se préparer, à prévenir et à réagir aux cyberincidents dans 4 secteurs sous règlement fédéral: les finances, les télécommunications, l'énergie et les transports. It will require the operators of the systems to bolster their protections against a wide array of incidents, including cyber attacks, electronic espionage, and ransomware. Cyber incidents above a certain threshold will be required to be reported, and the government will be able to compel companies to respond to cyber threats to protect their customers and employees. Over the past number of months, we've seen organizations across our country, from major hospitals to large factories, hit by ransomware and cyber attacks. Alors que nous redoublons nos propres défenses, nous devons les aider à renforcer les leurs. Nous prenons cette décision à un moment critique pour notre cybersécurité. En ce moment même, des réseaux 5G sont installés dans tous les pays. Cette innovation représente une opportunité majeure pour la concurrence et la croissance et fera une différence dans la vie quotidienne de presque tous les Canadiens. En tant que gouvernement, il est de notre responsabilité d'aider les Canadiens à saisir les opportunités, mais aussi de les protéger contre les risques. C'est exactement ce que fera cette nouvelle législation. Merci. Thank you. And I will now turn over to my friend and colleague, Minister Champagne. Pardon, mon ami.
That's good. Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone. It's nice to see a lot of you here today for a very important topic. Merci d'être là avec nous aujourd'hui. Earlier today, as you've seen and heard, my colleague Minister Mendicino and I introduced important legislation to make sure the government has the proper tools to safeguard the long-term security of our telecommunications systems, including our critical cyber systems in Canada. Plus tôt aujourd'hui, comme vous l'avez vu, mon collègue, le ministre Mendicino, a présenté un important projet de loi pour accorder au gouvernement les outils nécessaires pour assurer la sécurité à long terme de nos systèmes de télécommunications et protéger nos cybersystèmes critiques. This legislation includes amendments to the Telecommunications Act. Those amendments provide the Government of Canada with explicit legal authority to take any action necessary to secure our telecom systems from threat of disruption. This includes authority to prohibit Canadian telecom service providers from using products and services from high-risk suppliers. We all recognize here in Canada that our telecom infrastructure is among the most important and most critical infrastructure in our country to ensure the safety and prosperity of all Canadians. Our amendments would also bring legislation governing telecommunications in line with laws governing the security of the finance, energy, and transportation sectors, as was said by Minister Mendicino. Le projet de loi que nous présentons aujourd'hui apporte d'importantes modifications à la loi canadienne sur les télécommunications. Ces modifications incluent entre autres les pouvoirs d'interdire aux fournisseurs de services de télécommunications canadiens l'utilisation de produits et services de fournisseurs à haut risque. Nous savons tous que les infrastructures de télécommunications sont parmi les plus importantes et les plus critiques ici au pays pour assurer la prospérité et la sécurité des Canadiens. De plus, nous harmoniserons la loi canadienne sur les télécommunications avec les lois régissant la sécurité du secteur des finances, de l'énergie et des transports. Like I said a couple weeks ago, we always protect the safety and security of Canadians and take any and all actions necessary to safeguard our telecom infrastructure. Indeed, this is the logical next step to prohibit any potential companies that could pose a threat to our national security in the future. That's why we are taking action today. Le projet de loi que nous présentons aujourd'hui aura pour effet d'interdire toute entreprise potentielle qui pourrait constituer à l'avenir une menace à notre sécurité nationale. In closing, let me say that I firmly believe that we can build a leading-edge telecom industry that grows our economy and create jobs while at the same time safeguarding our national security. That's what Canadians expect of us. The legislation we are introducing today is a key step towards that goal, and with that, my colleague Minister Mendicino and I will be happy to take questions from you on the act that we presented today. Merci.
Good morning. Glenn McGregor, CTV News. This morning, your officials said it was important to protect the corporate privacy of companies that have been covered by this. So they have a mandatory reporting regime, but there's no public oversight of that. Can you explain why you've decided to make reporting mandatory, but the public won't be able to know other than just kind of aggregated data when these things happen?
Thanks very much for the question. First, as you point out, there are provisions within the bill that will ensure that as the government strengthens its relationships with industry leaders to protect cybersecurity, that we are also able to take the steps necessary to protect trade secrets, competitive information, information that is sensitive to the industry itself. With regards to your question around oversight, where national security is implicated, there are a wide variety of mechanisms that exist beyond this legislation, including NSICOP, including NSIRA, that does allow for there to be oversight of anything that overlaps with national security.
That's not very transparent, though, Minister. I mean, surely if my bank gets hacked, or my airline, or my ISP, as a consumer, should have the right to know about that.
Well, look, on a couple of things I would say. First, you're quite right that we want to be in a position to support Canadians as they integrate new technologies in 5G and into cyberspace into their lives. And that's precisely what this bill does, is it offers more support, more protection for Canadians as we leverage the economic opportunities that exist with these two technologies. And, for example, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity offers a wide variety of best practices and tips, not only to individual Canadians, but to leaders within the economic industry. And as for how we strike the balance between protecting information that is sensitive to national security, sensitive to the industry, with the need to also be transparent, I've already given you, I think, two examples where the national security sector is implicated. We do have oversight functions that are available. Oh, okay, good. No, I'm happy to. Yeah.
I won't know about it from you.
Yeah, no, I mean, in the course of that oversight, there is obviously an effort to be open and transparent as much as possible, but at the same time, protecting national security where necessary. And that is one of the fundamental objectives of this bill.
Wondering if you can help me understand why you introduced a bill, but it's not clear yet specifically who the operators this would cover. Why not be able to introduce a bill and say, yes, Bell, yes, TELUS, yes, TD Bank, yes, CP Rail, that this, once it receives royal assent, will cover you?
Well, as you heard in our announcement, there was a lot of thought given into identifying which sectors are vital to national security and public safety, and the bill prescribes those areas as being finance, energy, transportation, and telecommunications as a start. Once we start to get into those sectors, I think what you will see is that with the cooperation of those sectors, we'll start to designate those operators. And the whole point of that regime is to strengthen the collaboration between government, industry leaders, particularly those that are vital to national security and public safety, so they have all of the tools that they need, not only to protect the industry, but equally to protect Canadians. And I think it's really important to underline that as we incorporate and integrate new technologies into our economy, we also have to be very sober about the national security landscape as it exists. So dealing with more ransomware attacks, dealing with foreign interference, dealing with the wide array of tactics that are deployed by hostile state actors and their proxies is precisely why we launched this bill today. It's about both seizing the economic opportunity but protecting Canadians as well.
Have you, and I don't know, maybe this is a question more for Minister Champagne, but have you consulted industry ahead of this? And also I'm wondering if there's a component of this bill that acknowledges that maybe some of the big players aren't taking cybersecurity as seriously as you think that they should be.
I'll say briefly that yes, we have consulted, and I've had a number of very good and fruitful discussions with Goldie Hyder of the Business Council of Canada, for example, but I will turn it over to my colleague, Minister Champagne, to expand on the extent of industry consultations. Merci.
Well, thank you, Minister. Well, thank you for your question. Good to see you, by the way. I would say that's the logical next step. You know, when we made the announcement on May 19 that we would exclude, that our intention was to exclude Huawei and ZTE from our telecom network, 4G and 5G in Canada, I would say this is the legal authority that will allow us to do that. And we were clear at the time that this goes way beyond Huawei and ZTE because we want to have legislation that will cover the future. You know, if you think about the telecom infrastructure, that's probably the most critical infrastructure I can think of in our country. Obviously, the Minister Mendicino, mentioned a number of sectors that will be covered by that. But if you think of the data economy, the digital economy that is coming, to protect our telecom infrastructure is key and foremost. The good news, yes, we've been talking to the industry, and I would say the industry saw the writing on the wall because the vast majority of our telecom sector and infrastructure in Canada already exclude Huawei and ZTE from the infrastructure. What we provided in May 19 and what we're doing today was stability and predictability to protect one of the most critical infrastructure. And that's why I'm very pleased with working with Minister Mendicino in that, because if you think about cybersecurity, if you think about the economy of the future, I see that as a pyramid. And if you look at every aspect of every sector of the economy, whether you think aerospace, whether you think about the automotive industry, whether you think about the biopharma industry, the natural resources, it's going to be powered by AI, quantum technology, and cybersecurity. Those will be key to power the economy of tomorrow. And today, I think we're putting Canada best in class in the world when it comes to protecting our critical infrastructure, whilst at the same time having the legal authority to act to protect our national security.
Ma question est aussi pour vous, M. Champagne, Boris Proulx du Devoir. Je voulais savoir, ce projet de loi-là donne le droit au ministre, pour n'importe quelle raison de sécurité nationale, d'interdire, de prendre n'importe quelle mesure, en fait, faire prendre n'importe quelle mesure aux compagnies de télécom. Est-ce que vous ne croyez pas que d'autres pays puissent, premièrement, que ça puisse réduire l'investissement étranger, par exemple, au Canada, ou que même par réciprocité des entreprises canadiennes pourraient souffrir de d'autres pays qui font la même chose?
Je ne suis pas inquiet parce que je vous dirais, protéger la sécurité nationale, c'est une responsabilité, un devoir de chaque État. Et ce qu'on fait au Canada, ce n'est pas différent de ce que vous verrez dans les autres pays du G7. Moi, quand on parle, ce que les gens qui nous regardent à la maison aujourd'hui, les gens comprennent, c'est que la responsabilité première, c'est d'assurer la santé et sécurité des Canadiens et la prospérité. Une des façons de le faire, comme on sait que de plus en plus la vie va vers le digital, l'économie devient de plus en plus numérique, on voit tous aujourd'hui que la partie télécommunication va jouer un rôle essentiel dans nos vies de tous les jours. Et le 5G, ça sera encore plus parce qu'on parle de l'Internet des objets. Donc, de protéger ce système-là. Le ministre Mendicino le disait bien, on voit des acteurs étrangers, étatiques et non étatiques, qui essayent à certains moments de s'infiltrer, de vouloir prendre des données des entreprises de chez nous, de vouloir rentrer dans nos systèmes. Alors, de se donner les pouvoirs juridiques de le faire pour pouvoir agir de façon rapide, de façon raisonnée, mais aussi de façon proactive. Je pense que c'est la bonne chose. Puis je pense que c'est ce que les Canadiens s'attendent, mais je vous dirais aussi, les petites et moyennes entreprises s'attendent du gouvernement fédéral de jouer un rôle clé dans la cybersécurité. C'est exactement ce qu'on va faire avec la loi qu'on a présentée aujourd'hui.
Et M. Mendicino, peut-être, est-ce qu'il y aura des garde-fous ou des critères que le ministre devra regarder pour...
Des critères?
Oui, pour considérer que quelque chose est une menace pour la sécurité nationale et dicter des choses aux entreprises.
Bien sûr, et les critères pour utiliser les nouvelles autorités qui est dans le projet de loi vont être développés en conjonction avec les nouveaux règlements avec le bill. Et je veux juste tourner pour un moment à Glenn's question, because I thought the point about oversight is important. And I hasten to add that in addition to the two bodies that I mentioned, NSI, COP, and NCIRA, which are there to ensure that there's transparency and oversight as it relates to matters where national security is implicated, the bill also contemplates that there would be judicial oversight of any of the powers that are exercised by the government, which means that if there are any issues that are in contest or in dispute, that the courts would have the opportunity to examine the record and to make determinations around the way in which we're ensuring that cybersecurity is protected. So that's yet another mechanism by which there is integrity, transparency, and accountability in this new bill.
Hi, Steve Chase with the Globe and Mail. Good to see you both. Mr. Champagne, I think you've gotten younger during the pandemic.
I thought you said I got shorter.
No, younger. You look younger.
Younger, I take it. That's a good point.
You too, Steve.
I wanted to follow up on the question that Glenn was asking about privacy, but specifically on one part of the bill. The part one about the telecommunications providers, you say that there's a provision in there that says you're asking for the power to give Cabinet the ability to make any of this secret, and that it says disclosure will be prohibited by any person. Well, journalists are people, and there's also a up to $15 million penalty in the bill. So can you state unequivocally that journalists will not be subject to
Yes.
a bill, to fines? Just explain that, please.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate the question. And look, I can state unequivocally that Parliament's intent here, the government's intent, is not to pass a law that would chill your democratic responsibility and obligation to report on public events of all sorts. So that's not the intent. The intent of that provision is to ensure that there is compliant and, where necessary, enforcement as it relates to the unlawful disclosure of information which could be injurious to national security, which could be deemed to be of a sensitive nature to the industry, around competition, around trade secrets. And of course, as you mentioned, the fines are hefty, but I think it's important to send a very powerful signal that when the government is partnering with the economy, when we're partnering with industry leaders in those vital sectors, that we also have an obligation to protect information that is sensitive to them. But of course, it does not in any way intend to interfere with your job in reporting.
And how, second question is, how is it fair to deny compensation to telecom providers for this? You are asking for if you count the different powers, there's quite a number of powers to direct telecommunications companies to do certain, telecom providers to do certain things, and then you say there's no compensation. Do you think that, are they happy with that, and can you justify that?
Well, I'll let Minister Champagne expand on that, but in the course of the drafting of this bill, there were consultations with industry leaders. There was also an opportunity for the government to explain why it is that we were introducing the new authorities, or we plan to introduce the new authorities that are necessary. I think the main point, Steve, is that through this bill, we're endeavoring to strengthen cybersecurity for Canadians who are using that space increasingly to navigate their daily lives. And as we do that, it is imperative that the government strengthen its partnerships and its relationships with industry leaders, with the federal regulators who are responsible for setting the parameters of those industries, and so that we can also provide additional supports and protections for Canadians. But I know Minister Champagne may have a few more words to add on the extent of those conversations with the innovation sector and telecommunications sector.
Thank you, sir. And Steve, likewise, it's good to see you. It's been quite some time. I've been here last time. There'll be no compensation. And the part of the reason for that is that, and I've said it before, our telecom network in Canada, as you know well, largely exclude already equipment from ZTE and Huawei. That's certainly the case in 5G. In 4G, that's why we left also a period of time for people to be able to replace the equipment. That's very much in line with kind of the normal replacement you would do in terms of upgrades, because as you move from 4G to 5G, you need to do these upgrades. We've been talking to the sector, but I think Canadians expect us, when it comes to national security, they expect us to act swiftly. And also to make sure that this transition would be orderly, because that's one of the most critical infrastructure. But the good thing, if you compare, and I know you do that often, because what I like, there's many things, but one thing you do is to compare with other countries. You will see that the situation in Canada is largely different than some of our Five Eyes allies, and I would say G7 allies, is that the equipment of Huawei and ZTE was largely excluded already, like I said, from the 5G. And the replacement of the 4G, we have given a period of time for them to be able to do that. I think that put Canada in quite a unique situation compared to some other G7 nation, in the sense that companies had already perhaps anticipated that we would take a similar measure in order to protect our critical infrastructure. Merci.
Est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir une autre question en français? Parce qu'il y en a une.
Oui, c'est sûr. Allez-y, madame, puis on va se dépêcher. Ça période des questions. Go ahead, madame.
Okay. So I guess with this bill, Huawei and ZTE will not participate in the building of the 5G. What about the cell phone of Huawei? Will this, if you perceive Huawei as a threat, don't you think the cell phone can also be a threat?
Listen, we've always been clear from the get-go. You will recall the policy statement, and I would refer you to the policy statement that I issued with Minister Medicine on May 19. We were really specifically talking about critical network in Canada, namely the 4G and 5G network. That decision is based in the best interest of Canadians, the best interest of our critical infrastructure, but also in light with our national security. Like I said, I think that every country in the world's duty is to protect national security, and it's also responsibility. What is true for other countries is true for Canada, and we've been very clear that what we're targeting is the critical infrastructures, the network. It's not the phones or other type of equipment that the companies may decide to sell in Canada.
I'll give you my follow-up.
Sure, Madame Alice.
Merci beaucoup. Émilie Bergeron, la presse canadienne. Ma question, c'est sur les obligations de divulgation quand il y a une cyberattaque. Il y a des dispositions de la loi là-dessus, mais je comprends qu'il y a des précisions qui doivent être faites par voie réglementaire. Pouvez-vous expliquer au moment là, où ça serait adopté, ça serait dans les 6 mois, 1 mois, combien de temps ça prendrait avant qu'on sache la liste des entités qui devraient signaler tout incident là, et dans quel type d'incident ça devrait être signalé?
Okay, tout d'abord, il y a des timelines dans le projet de loi qui expliquaient les obligations des opérateurs qui étaient identifiés comme dans le secteur qui était essentiel à la sécurité nationale et la sécurité publique. Et sur la question de la test, quand il y a une obligation pour, par exemple, rapporter un incident, un cyberincident, ça c'est un test qui vont être développés au même temps de les règlements qui vont être ajoutés à le projet de loi. Donc, il y a des détails encore de finaliser, de vérifier en consultation avec les leaders dans l'industrie.
Est-ce qu'il va y avoir des sanctions pécuniaires pour la non-divulgation aussi? Ou ça fait
Oui,
pas
il y a un système où il y a des fonds, des fines, des amendes, exactement. Merci, mon ami. J'ai fait des progrès, mais en plus, il y a des autres détails de finaliser avec les règlements.
Comment est-ce que les Canadiens vont être mieux protégés avec ce projet de loi-là et comment l'économie va être mieux protégée?
Bien, écoutez, moi, je l'ai dit avant que vous arriviez, peut-être plus tôt, on parle de la sécurité, on parle de protéger les Canadiens, mais on parle aussi de la prospérité économique, parce que quand on comprend que dans l'économie digitale, l'économie numérique, qu'on s'en va vers l'Internet des objets, de protéger. Si vous regardez les infrastructures critiques au pays, vous en conviendrez avec moi que l'infrastructure de télécommunications, c'est l'un des plus importants, voire le plus important dans l'économie de demain, de protéger cette infrastructure-là face aux attaques de cybersécurité pour assurer la résilience. Et comme je l'ai dit avec votre collègue plus tôt, ça va bien au-delà du ZTE Huawei. Ce qu'on est en train de faire, c'est la prochaine étape logique pour nous donner l'autorité légale d'ajouter quelques compagnies que ce soit qui pourraient éventuellement porter atteinte à la sécurité nationale. Ça nous permet de protéger les Canadiens, mais en même temps d'assurer la prospérité économique au pays. Là-dessus, on va se revoir à la période des questions. Tout le monde, merci. Merci tout le monde. À plus tard.